Tropical storm Ophelia has made landfall in North Carolina and it is currently post-tropical over Virginia. Good evening, I'm Mike Nasa with this 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time update on Saturday night, taking a look at the tropics. There goes Ophelia. It's drying up pretty quickly there over the mid-Atlantic. Made landfall near Emerald Isle, North Carolina as a strong tropical storm. Pressure got down to 980, 981 millibars, and it almost became a hurricane, but it has since weakened. It's now post-tropical. A lot of water issues there with storm surge. We have a new tropical storm out in the central Atlantic that we'll talk about. It could get close to becoming a hurricane, but it should turn out similar to Lee and Nigel. And we have an interesting flare up here in the Atlantic. We're also watching the coast of Africa. We could see more development even after our new system. So a lot to talk about. Here's the latest on post-tropical cyclone Ophelia as of 11 p.m. Eastern Time. It was at 37.1 north, 77.6 west. That puts it about 30 miles south-southwest of Richmond, Virginia. Winds of 35, so it's weakened greatly. Moving north at 8, it should continue to dissipate as it moves over Maryland and Delaware. It will not be strong as far as wind concerns. However, it still has some moisture with it. Now, here's the water vapor, and you're going, Mike, where's the moisture? It's there, but it is definitely drying up fast. We're thankful. This could all be a rain shield right here with some tropical systems, but it's just not a lot of moisture. There's a lot of dry air here pumping into the side of the system, and most of the strong winds are still offshore. So it's a very nasty weather night here off areas of the mid-Atlantic and New England, but thankfully, a lot of it has not spread inland. When we look at the radar imagery, it shows it even better. This right here is what's really left of the circulation moving through areas of Richmond, heading up towards Washington, D.C. But again, heavy weather here off Atlantic City. Other than that, pretty dry. I mean, Lynchburg, Raleigh, Jacksonville, North Carolina, Elizabeth City, Virginia Beach. You might be gusty, you might have had some rain, but it looks like most of it's dried up for you, so that's great news as Ophelia continues to push towards the north and eventually the northeast. Despite the storm drying up, there is still a slight flood risk that goes from Richmond through Washington, through Philadelphia and New York, all the way up to Hartford, because again, as it moves northeast, it could flare up and down with more rainfall. Nevertheless, it looks like by Tuesday morning it should be pretty clear there, and you're not going to have to deal with anything. So, Ophelia, we hardly knew you, but there was some damage there. It looks like areas Washington, North Carolina took a pretty hard storm surge. There was a lot of onshore flow, beach erosion, so it was a nasty tropical storm, but hopefully things will be getting better. The power outages right now, I'm looking at the power outages in North Carolina, not looking too bad. I mean, we do have some, obviously, but nothing compared to how many people are tracked there, so that's good news as we move up into Virginia. Looks like not too bad either. I mean, we're not seeing any massive wind power outages, so that's good news as we continue to watch the system push on in. We have a new tropical storm out in the Atlantic. This is Tropical Storm Philippe. As of 11 p.m. Atlantic time, Philippe was at 15.4 north, 40.9 west, with winds of 40 miles per hour. It's a low-end minimal tropical storm. It's moving west at 14. Now, this should continue to move west, maybe a little west-northwest, and then it should eventually turn. Now, in the meantime, it will strengthen close to hurricane intensity by Wednesday, Thursday, but we don't know right now if it'll become a hurricane, and if it does, it might not be a major hurricane the way Hurricane Lee was a couple of weeks ago. Nevertheless, it looks like another turner. We've seen a lot of that this year, and that is great news. Here's the satellite imagery. It's blowing up there, but it's not extremely well defined over the center. It's still dealing with some issues. Nevertheless, as it continues towards the west-northwest, strengthening should be steady. Here's another wave about to leave Africa, and some of the long-range models show this becoming a tropical system too, although that one is also likely to get swept up. So, very, very good news with the tracks so far this year. Here's the computer model guidance on Philippe, and again, they seem in good agreement, west, west-northwest, and then eventually north, and then maybe even northeast. So let's get it out of here. So far, this hurricane season has been extremely active. And That is very unusual for an El Nino year. We think the reason it's been active is because of the very, very warm weather. I'm sorry, the very, very warm water we've seen off areas there of Africa. And when we look at these tracks, most of these tracks have originated near Africa. However, most of them have turned out. If you look, all these tracks, even Ophelia, even Idalia, with the exception of Harold moving into Texas, almost every track has had that eastward component, and that's why we haven't had as significant of land impacts as we could have. I mean, Hurricane Lee was a monster. That could have easily gone into the islands. Hurricane Franklin was a monster. That could have gone up to the East Coast. Other than Idalia being a Category 3 major hurricane in the Florida Big Bend, we lucked out so far this year. I mean, not to say that they didn't have impacts with Franklin and Hispaniola or Idalia in Florida or right now in North Carolina with Ophelia. By and large, it could have been a lot worse. Now, we're not done yet, and we'll start to look at this region as we get into October and November as potential homebrew for some systems. The GFS model's been showing something trying to come up, similar to late season storms moving over western Cuba and South Florida. So we're going to watch that area very carefully, but overall, an interesting hurricane season. Very busy, but for land, we've only had Harold, Idalia, and Ophelia strike the United States, and only one of those was a hurricane, Idalia, a major hurricane. So we'll see what else is in store this hurricane season, but right now, the focus should be on any cleanup recoveries in North Carolina and keeping an eye on Philippe as he moves towards the west-northwest. I'm Mike Nasa with the latest on the tropics. Please subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.